Robert. Congratulations on your new film, Bardejov.
Yes, thank you very much.
You know, it these type of films are always fascinating, especially we keep on making these type of films because it resonates throughout history. But we have to hear it from you first. Is what initially drew you to this project?
Well, I've understood the rising anti-Semitism in the country since the 90s in America. And growing up, being a child of the 50s, I remember also that there were a lot of remembrances of the Holocaust and a lot of people being, uh, uh, they were aware of it and also honored it, the recollection of it. And I saw this over the decades, it slowly being erased from our media and society, and a shift. And I had a political mentor, a man named David Horowitz, who was a communist and he turned conservative. He wrote a book called Radical Sun. And he had a group called the Wednesday Morning Club in Hollywood, where a group of conservative thinkers, the top thinkers of the movement, would come and give lectures. And David wrote many, many interesting books. And he also went to the universities and spoke about the rising anti-Semitic sentiment happening in our universities. And so being aware of this and seeing it happen and exploding and getting more, I even wrote an article on Breitbart. I've written for Breitbart since 2009. Why isn't the Gaza Strip like Disneyland? Why hasn't the Gaza Strip been, with all the money, why hasn't it been, properly built up? And it wasn't Israel's fault. And I also knew from Bill Clinton, and this recently came out, that Arafat had 98% of what they wanted, a two-state solution. And Arafat said to Bill Clinton, give me a second. And he went and made a phone call, and Arafat came back and said, no deal. So knowing all of this, which a lot of the left forgets in America, this film, I did a film called The Engineer with Danny A., which was about the first suicide bomber in Asaf. I play a senator whose daughter is murdered in the bus. And look at this. I also played a Palestinian in 1988 in a film called Terrorist on Trial, the United States of America versus Salim Ajami, which I believe, which was produced by Bill Englund, who produced a movie called The Ugly American in the 1960s with Marlon Brando. Very forward-thinking guy, Bill. And it had to deal with Southeast Asia, a diplomat from American diplomat, Southeast Asia, and very interesting conflict. I forget the country that it was set in, but it was, again, ahead of its time. So I played this character, Salim Ajami. And from the 1988, I deeply then started to study the conflict in the region. I went to then I went to Jordan to film Son of Pink Panther with Blake Edwards. We filmed there for 2 weeks. I went to Petra and Amman, where the king of Jordan, then the father, said to me, and his sister, would I teach an acting class in Jordan? And I said, that's an interesting idea. I says, I would like to set up a school. How about that? Get $50 million. They looked at me. I go, not for me. I said, you'd have to pay me something, but I want to get other artists involved, cinematographers, actors, singers, directors, screenwriters, to teach a film school open to Arabs, Israelis in the region, equal number. I said, because if they learn the creative arts, more communication could be done through film and culture than all the bullets in the world. And when you think of what happened in Dubai and other places, this is 1994, by the way. And he said, a very interesting idea. And that's who I went to. So this whole thing has been on the plate, on my platter. The script came to me. Danny A., who I've done several films with, Abed Gaza, the director, terrific director, young director. And we've done 7 films together. And he knows my work fully, and we're good friends. And he sent me the script. He says, "Who would you like to play?" So I read the script, and usually, we've done. It's been that kind of uh, gangster films we had done with Danny, except for the engineer, which now was his first foray into a kind of a different realm of filmmaking, which I think is way he should go. And I said, "This is great, this Bardejov. It's a true story." And I read the script, and the character of Lowy, Rudolph Lowy, Rudolph Lowy,
Hmm.
just jumped out at me. That was I vibrated with that character. And I called Danny. I said, "Danny, I got to play Lowy." I says, "I'll knock it out of I really feel it's into the bone." And he says, "Okay, let me make sure." And then he told me about Emil Fish, Mr. Fish, who was a Holocaust survivor, how he met him on the plane and got involved in the project. And he said, because I wasn't Jewish, you know what I mean, would it bother him? No, if he's a good actor, that's okay. And so you found none of that, you know what I mean? Um, and I did the film, and it was a blessing. It was a mitzvah. And it was just meeting Mr. Fish and hearing his story, and then filming in not only Tel Aviv, but in Bardejov, in the
Hmm.
actual city where some of Raful Lowy's relatives. So the power of the script, telling this untold story that's true, 1942 Slovakia. That's like a full, Michelin dinner for an actor.
That's wonderful. And how did you transform into a Jewish leader, Lowy, for yourself? What kind of research or what kind of research into the character and the culture of things?
Excuse me. Well, my first wife, when I was still in college at Hofstra University, was Jewish. Actually, we got married in St. Patrick's Cathedral, no less. But she was Jewish. Her family was Jewish, and they sat on one side. My family sat on the other side. But we had, and I had understood the Jewish tradition because of my family and friends of my father's, and Long Island. Growing up in New York was always very. I always felt that Christ was Jewish, and the traditions of Judaism were what Christ followed. So why not follow those traditions? Why not understand those traditions? So I've always had that thing. I'd been to synagogue a lot, and there was a Rebbe, Schneerson, who was in Brooklyn, and I've heard a lot about him, saw a lot about him, and I started to research him. This is before Bardejov, but I was intrigued by what this Rebbe was. Uh, and I don't know if you've ever seen tapes of him, Rabbi Schneerson. Should look at it. Very humble, very interesting character. And I watched a lot of those tapes. I then got in touch with the Chabad Center here in Tampa, where I live now. And I immersed myself in the culture and in uh, it was just the story just had an emotional impact. So that's what it was. It was a faith-based film.
Hmm. I
I
know.
had I had one of the big Christian media guys watch it, and they said this, it was faith-based, and they loved the film.
And I especially love the fact that unlike a lot of Holocaust films, this is sort of a much more of a non-violent Holocaust film because the story is fascinating because it was basically saving Jewish people without really firing a shot.
Yes. Well, Gig, what happens is, of course, the my character initially wants to blow up the whole town because of his anger toward them. He was very defiant. Lowy, in reality, was arrested several times by the Hlinka Guard, and the rabbi there says violence isn't the way,
Hmm.
and they decide not to use violence. That's not our tenant. That's not our covenant. Violence, which is a big message, and the town still celebrates their normalcy of their tradition, and then this miracle happens for them. which if you watch the film, you'll see it. It's quite extraordinary, and that it's a true story. And this is this was very powerful because a lot of times also you see a Holocaust film or a World War II film where the Jews are the victims, only the victims, and they don't have anything that they do for themselves except hide and run, and someone else saves them. This year, the community saves itself. And I thought that was a powerful message.
Absolutely. And I want to wrap it up with one last question with you, Robert. Is you're always known as a familiar face, in a lot of films, and known as playing villains, of course. And you're such a chameleon. You could play any type of role. So when you're playing a role, that is such a good guy in this case, is it refreshing to you to play something a whole lot different from all these villainous roles in the past?
Well, I've never played a character where I thought he was the villain.
Hmm.
And, as a matter of fact, my mentor was Stella Adler for acting. And also the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg. And I have a very extensive background with my education and training. But a good note, and I played a TV series called Profiler. I don't know if you've ever seen that,
Yeah, I've
where I
seen.
played the head of the FBI profile. I created profiling, and I saved a lot of lives in that show. And I was the good guy, and a couple of other independent films where I played the good guy. But I always took it as to play the good guy, even when I did the Bond film, License to Kill. Ian Fleming says there's that Bond and the villain are mirror images of each other. And I played him like he was a Bond character, Sanchez, even though he's a Colombian drug lord based on Escobar and Ochoa and the rest of them. So that's a tenet they do. You play the good guy like the bad guy and the bad guy like the good guy, because you still want to have that heroic edge. The hero still needs a certain kind of strength of character
Yeah.
for the audience to believe he can defeat forces of evil. And Lowy was a great character because he was defiant. He had that toughness about him. He had that defiance about him, which I think was wonderful for me that I responded to, and also the compassion, the deep feeling compassion. So yes, it is. It's like I also sing, and different songs give you different emotional levels. And that's what this is. It lets you have more colors to your palette as a human being and as an actor.
Well said, well said. And Robert, I thank you for this conversation about Bardejov. It is a wonderful film. Like as I say, netter,
No
always
doubt.
remember. And thank you also for mentioning David Howard. I haven't heard that name since I used to work for the California Review, a conservative college newspaper back
Oh
in the
wow.
90s. So
Yes, he doesn't get enough current credit. You know, I remember introducing Victor Davis Hanson at one of his things in the 90s. David Horowitz's meetings, and many conservative thinkers. Yes, he was a great man. He still is. I think he's 85 now.
yes, absolutely. So it is wonderful, Robert. I hope we do this again. And Bardejov is now available on Prime Video today. So thank you very much, Robert, for speaking to me about this
My
film.
pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Gig.
Thank you.
Take care. Blessed
You too.
holidays.
Have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas, brother. Bye.
Bye.